Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rise and Lead Women's Leadership Perspectives. I am your host, ChèRee Wiley, founder and CEO of Diverse Perspectives, where we help to take your personal and professional goals to the next level through our consulting and writing services. This podcast is designed to assist you in taking your leadership journey to the next level. And so today I want to spend some time talking about the journey. This is the time of year where typically I start to really reflect on all the things that have come before and start to think about the future. And so part of that reflection time is a place where I really think about where I've come from. And a lot has happened this year, a lot of positive things. Last year, things just started to really take off. And so I'm in a totally different place right now in September than I was when the year even started. And that just has left me in a place of gratefulness. I'm definitely grateful that so much has happened, so many positive things and so much positive change have occurred over the last 9 months. But also, I am definitely really kind of leaning into what got me here and what I want to do moving forward, because I am a person that is ever in motion, right? Like I take out the time to rest, and we've talked a little bit about that and that self-care piece earlier on in this particular season of the podcast. But it's always thinking about what's next. What is the next move? What is the next opportunity? What am I doing to make sure that I get to the place where I really want to be? And for me, it is always about progress. Like I'm doing great right now, but I can always do better. And so what does that look like and what does that take? And so my last guest was really wonderful. I really enjoyed the conversation that we had, but she brought up something that I would like to spend a little time really delving into in this particular podcast. And that was the fact that leadership looks different for different people. So we often think about leadership and leadership style being one way. The leader is always the most outgoing person, the most, outspoken person, the person that always has the answers and kind of takes charge. But what do we do when leadership looks different? And how do we identify leadership within ourselves if we don't show up that way? And so the best way that I can really illustrate this fact is to use my own life. I have been in lots of positions of leadership over the years. Even before I had official titles, it always just kind of happened. And I was probably the least likely person to become a leader because I am naturally an introvert. Most people who have met me in the last few years of life would be like, no way, there's no way possible that you ever were an introvert. I most certainly am. And anyone who's known me for a long time knows that. So when I was young, I was extremely quiet, and I was not the person that was going to volunteer to go first or do anything first or even to speak up. And a lot of times, I didn't speak up. I just kind of stayed in the background and I watched and I observed what other people were doing. And I was learning in that process. And I've, mentioned that side of it before, because a person who understands the value of silence and the value of just watching and observing your surroundings, you learn a lot. You learn about people. You learn about the way that people interact with other people. You learn how to do things well and how to avoid certain things. And so there's definitely value in your ability to be quiet. And there, I've been in a lot of leadership spaces where people really do think that, talking all the time accomplishes something, but that's not the case. When you talk more than you listen, you're missing out on things. And a lot of times you'll miss the genius in the room because you are soaking up all the air, right? And so there's a term that was used in the former position that I was in, the former school system that I was in, they used to always talk about share the air. And I had never really heard that term before coming into that space. But I think that it's a powerful term, that there are a lot of people who want to identify as leaders who don't understand the value of sharing the air. And so being a natural introvert, I understand that concept. I understand that there are times when I should be talking, and there are times when I must listen. And when I'm listening, I'm learning. I'm learning about you. I'm learning about the situation. I'm getting a better understanding. That's also a time for me to process, right? So in that time of you talking and me listening or me observing, I'm processing everything. And there are solutions that are happening in my mind, in my head, that I will then share once it is the space and opportunity is available. And so, I have learned that that is actually a strength. But when I was younger, I did not see it that way. And a lot of other people made me feel as though it wasn't a strength because, I was too shy. I wasn't, why don't you speak up? Why don't you participate? And there were times when I did miss out on opportunities because I was afraid to use my voice. And, that was just a time of growth and development for me. And so as time went on, I started to see that there were gaps. And I was observing these gaps in lots of different places. I grew up in church. And so I might see that there was a need somewhere that other people were kind of missing. But because of my observant nature, I was able to see those holes and, make those suggestions. A lot of times it would just be quietly to my mother or my grandmother, but it was still that acknowledgement that something was off and needed to change. And so throughout my life, that happened in a lot of different spaces that I ended up in. And I would end up being called out because I noticed those holes and would offer solutions to fix them. And this happened in a lot of different ways. I was a sports medicine trainer in high school. And so I became, more of a lead in that capacity because of my ability to see what we could do better. Right. And so then when I got to college, there were different opportunities where, whether it was in the gospel choir or I was in, a different groups that I was in. I did editing for a magazine or article that like a subscription that kind of came out. We started that, a group of us together, and how do we identify those holes there? And so there were different opportunities where my strengths were on display, but I didn't see it yet as leadership. I thought that I was just using what came natural to me and not even acknowledging that those were skills that were attributed to leadership. And so in those spaces, I realized that the reason why I couldn't see that at that time was a lack of confidence. And so that is one key thing that must happen as we develop as leaders. We have to build confidence within ourselves. And sometimes we wait for people to validate like our ability to do something well. And sometimes it just doesn't happen. And so it really has to be within you, like internal, for you to say, okay, I can't keep waiting for somebody else to do something when I see the holes, I see the gaps, but apparently no one else is seeing it. It's time for me to step up. And a lot of times that is us coming out of our comfort zone. And there was a conversation that I just had with a good friend recently. Like, we are always pushed to become uncomfortable so that we can get to the next level. You cannot grow without discomfort. And that is a fact in anything. If you think about just the way development happens, there's going to be a level of discomfort that comes with growth, whether it's, physically discomfort. No, my shoes don't fit anymore. My clothes don't fit anymore. I gotta redo this or I gotta redo that. Growth always comes with some level of discomfort. It may not be a lasting level, right? Because if I wake up tomorrow and, I've grown an inch, which is not going to happen because I am a fully adult woman. But if I were a young person and that happened to me and I couldn't fit my shoes and I couldn't fit my clothes, somebody's going to buy me some new shoes and clothes. That discomfort only lasts for a little while, but it still happens, right? And so that's what happens when we're talking about getting to the next level in leadership. We cannot grow as leaders without coming out of our comfort zone. Our comfort zone could very well be for us to be in the back, hiding, right? And that is going to look different than that leader that's running out front. But that leader that's running out front also needs some growth in that area because they may need to learn how to listen more. And you cannot lead without the ability to listen. I mean, you can, but you won't be a very effective leader because the people in which you lead need you to listen to them in order for positive relationships to happen and for that environment to grow. And so there's so many different examples that can be used in that, but getting back to my story and how my leadership developed in a more unconventional way, it was many times where I was pushed into a place where I had to speak up because nobody was. And over time, I started to realize that when I did use my voice, that it positively impacted people, that there was someone there that needed me to advocate for them, even though I didn't know it. It was someone there that needed me to speak up because they weren't even aware of what they needed. They just knew that whatever was happening in that moment wasn't the thing that they needed, right? And that happens to all of us at times where we get in a place where we can't even articulate what it is that we need, but we know that the space we're in at that moment just doesn't feel right. And so who speaks for them? And so I really had to take on this idea of, why do I keep waiting for someone else to see and do what I see and do right now, what I see and can do right now? It is not the responsibility of someone else to say these things when it's happening all in here, right? When that reflection time and that processing time and that observing time actually brings forth concrete ideas and solutions to problems, why am I still waiting for someone else to be the one to say it? Because I'm hiding behind this wall of I'm an introvert, I'm too shy, I'm not that. I'm not whoever I saw that is always the first one to raise their hand and jumping out of their seat and wanting that attention. I'm not them. And so I have disqualified myself when I'm qualified to say what it is. I'm qualified to make this observation. But because I doubt myself, a lot of things just never change. And that was the moment when it clicked for me that as much as it frightened me at times, especially in the beginning, I'm in a totally different place now. But when I first, came to this realization, probably about 8 or 9 years ago, it was scary for me because I realized you can't hide anymore. And I was really, really good with the connections that I was comfortable with, right? So, those of you who have been watching for a while know that I started my career in education, in the classroom as a classroom teacher. I was doing my thing. I found my rhythm in that and my comfortability in that. I talk to young people all day, and in there, I'm in my element. I got, my humor going on and all of my energy. And it was just, this is great. But I didn't want to talk in a staff meeting or talk to faculty, or couldn't even have imagined when I started teaching 15 years ago that I would be talking to other educators about getting better at their practice when it comes to education. Couldn't imagine it. Never would have. If someone would have told me that 15 years ago, I would have looked at them and laughed. But there was a path. The journey for me in leadership had already begun in that place, because what happened in that space is that I found that I was really good at teaching. I was really good at connecting with students. I was really, really good at telling stories and bringing those things to life. And as an English teacher, that is a requirement, because, half the kids in there don't want to read at all. And so you got to keep it fresh. You got to keep it interesting. You got to at least, make them like you enough that they'll at least try to do whatever it is you're asking them to do. And in those times, I realized, like, you definitely have something to offer, but it still took even more time. And so once I found that niche and realized I was really good at teaching, I made the decision that I was going to continue my education. And so I ended up taking a graduate assistant position actually before I entered the classroom. And that kind of gave me some experience and exposure to kind of what it was like to teach adults and talk to adults about different things, and be that kind of mentor in some ways. Didn't do it a lot, was extremely uncomfortable. The one time I tried to really get out of my comfort zone in that space, I was mortified afterwards, like, what in the world did you do? But it was a wonderful experience, and it really opened the door to every experience after that. So after finishing my first master's degree, I decided to go back and get my second, and it was specifically in English education, and I was all about teaching. And so as I continued with that and finished with that and ended up getting a teaching job, so I went from middle school environment, which actually was an alternative school. Wonderful experience. I actually loved it there. At first, I didn't think I was going to, and definitely thought that I was not cut out for it, because in my mind, I was going to be like Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Minds. I don't know what I was thinking, because that is not how that whole thing went. It was, the first month was like horrific, like to the point where I wanted to jump ship. And I remember having a conversation with my mother, who, if you all remember, was my first guest on my very first episode of the podcast. And she was just like, you cannot keep doing this. Because I was calling her almost every day crying. And she was like, you have to make a decision. Either you're going to do this or you're going to quit. But we can't keep doing this. And so I really thought about it, and I was like, I am not a quitter. Like, that is not who I am as a person. And so I completely changed the way that I approached going into that classroom. It was the most empowering experience of my life, because once I really realized the seriousness of what I was doing, and I remembered my own experience as a very intelligent young lady who was so quiet that I was easily overlooked in most spaces. I decided I wanted better for these young people. And there some of their stories were so heartbreaking about how basically in education, they had just been kind of thrown away. I knew that I was in the right place at the right time, and it brought this fire began to burn on the inside of me that I carried with me through those years. And I was in that space for 3 years, and then a lot of life transitionings happened, and I moved, and I had to start over in life because of just a traumatic life change that occurred in those years after leaving that particular space. I ended up back home in my hometown, and I ended up teaching high school English. And it was another eye-opening experience for me. Now, I definitely no longer had issues with classroom management or any of those terrors, because that alternative setting had definitely forged me by fire. And I had gotten all the tools that I needed to be successful in my new environment. But then I started to really see that it didn't matter if it was an alternative setting or if it was a traditional setting. There were young people who were not getting exactly what they needed. And that was happening because of a lack of understanding and acknowledgement by the educators in which they had. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying that educators are the problem, because they are the solution, but they have to understand that they're the solution. And some educators don't understand the responsibility that they have. And just like, when we think about parenting, it's very similar along the same lines. We are responsible as educators and as leaders and as parents, whatever role that you're in, or if you're in all three, for the success or failure of the people in which we have been gifted with. And I still refer to every one of those levels as a gift. Every student that I ever had was a gift to my life, and I cherish the moments that I had with each one of them and the way that I was able to be instrumental in their growth and development on their life's journey. I also see it the same way the people that I've governed, that I have been, responsible for leading, that I hope that I left behind some seed of success that they will carry with them and that they will be able to model in their own lives. And of course, as a mother, I definitely want to make a lasting and positive impact on my children. And so understanding that responsibility is key to change. And that is what I realized was lacking, is that sometimes people need to be shown the way when it comes to that. They need someone to say, you have a responsibility. Here's some ways that you can do that successfully. And sometimes when we have the tools, we can just be better at what we do. I have never assumed that any educator that I've come in contact with was intentionally not good at their job. Now, I think that there are some educators that get to a place where they do not care. Just like there are some leaders that get to that place, and there are some parents that get to that place. So that is not, an impossible thing, but I do not think that that is the majority. I think that that's the minority. There's a small group of people who just don't care. The majority of people want to do well in whatever position that they're in. They just may not always know what that looks like. And so that's where my leadership really, really taps in, because I am a natural motivator. I also want people to do well in whatever it is they're doing. And I'm sure you could ask former students that I've had, I wanted them to succeed genuinely. I still do. Even the ones that, have taken out the time to connect with me on social media and all those things, I watch their lives and I'm so proud of their accomplishments, no matter where they are, because it has always been my heart and my desire for anyone that I come in contact with to succeed and do well. I have never been one of those people that felt like your success meant that it was to my detriment. No, if you succeed, then I feel like I've succeeded, especially if I've had the privilege of being a part of your journey. And so that was something that was really like brewing in me from that very first teaching assignment. And it just grew over time, me being in spaces around teachers who would ask me questions about, how I could get certain students to do certain things and how they, would behave in my class compared to how they were in the hallways or in another teacher's class. And really starting to see that there was a need for people to kind of get more tools in their toolkit for them to be able to use in order to help take people to the next level. And that is exactly what this particular platform is about as well. Like, as a leader, we want to be good as leaders. We need the tools to do that. And so that is very, very important to the leadership journey, is to continue to grow and to develop. But you have to believe that you've got something, that you're working with something. And so over years of me, observing what was happening around me, I started to step out and ask, can I give a PD on classroom management? Can I lead a PD on the curriculum that we're teaching and how we approach what equity and diversity looks like within a classroom, right? Like, what does it mean to create an inclusive spaces, and how do we bring in student voices? And so there were so many different opportunities of things for me to share that I was already doing well, that I wanted other people to do well, because I understood that if it was working and successful in my room, in my classroom, then if it was taken outside of my classroom to another classroom, it would positively impact young people. And that was what was most on my mind at that time. And honestly, it still is, but just it's transformed into something different. So in my current leadership work, it is really about making sure that we are understanding and seeing those that are in front of us, and that could happen in any capacity. And I work with educational leaders in education spaces. I work with leaders that are in corporate spaces. I work with leaders that are in ministry spaces, leaders who have their own businesses. It still all plays out the same way, that it's about those connections and about understanding the needs of the people in front of you, and how do we highlight those things to make people feel seen, and making sure that spaces are places where they want to be. Because if we really think about it, we all want that. Nobody comes to work, wakes up in the morning, does anything that they do wanting to be ignored and underappreciated and dismissed. Nobody wants that. Like, we want to be in spaces where we are celebrated, where our ideas and contributions are appreciated, where we feel like the people who we interact with every day really care about us and want us to be there. We want to be seen. And that is part of that leadership journey, is us seeing ourselves. I'm going to say that again. Us seeing ourselves. Because sometimes we are so busy waiting for someone else to see us that we miss the value of ourselves. And there's a big difference between being arrogant and walking in confidence, and the understanding that you carry such valuable gifts and you have something to offer, not just the people in your house, not just the few people on your team, but the much larger system that exists. And when you are in a place where you see that for yourself, your journey really starts to take on a different form. Again, I mentioned at the beginning how when I first started, I never could have seen myself here, in a place where, I have done trainings, I have been speakers at conferences, a speaker at a conference, or multiple conferences. Obviously, I am now doing a podcast. I have talked to church groups. I have, spoken in different capacities, including, in churches and all of those things. I've done so many things that I never could have imagined myself doing, because I developed the confidence to understand that not only was I qualified, but that I had something to say. I had something that other people wanted to hear. And that was something that I struggled with personally for years, because for years, there was this little voice in the back of my head that was like, nobody wants to hear what you have to say. You don't have anything to say. You need to just stay quiet, let them talk. They're going to think your ideas are crazy, all sorts of things, of just self-doubt and a lack of confidence that kept me silent for years when I needed to speak. And it was probably about a year and a half ago. I also have a blog that's on my website. I wrote an article called Silent No More. And in that article, I really delve into like those feelings of how my journey really helped me to see that my voice was instrumental in helping to change not only spaces that I entered, right, but also to help change people's lives. Because when someone grabs hold to this, like to this concept of the leadership journey and how it doesn't have to look the same for everybody, imagine what will happen next. And if you are that woman who is on the fence, who's always questioning herself, who's like, I've got such great ideas, but I don't think anybody wants to hear them. I don't want to share them. I encourage you, I challenge you to step out of your comfort zone and believe in yourself enough to put those ideas, thoughts, and suggestions out there, because I am telling you, someone in the space that you're in needs to hear what it is that you have to say. Someone needs that idea. Someone is waiting on that idea. That idea is going to change someone's life. And as you continue on this journey of leadership, I hope that you will find the confidence that you need to continue to put one foot in front of the other to help to get other people to a place where they are getting exactly what they need, because that idea is not just there for you. That idea is there to help someone else. And when we really grab hold to those concepts, the concept that we are the change that needs to happen in the world, like we're not waiting for someone else to make that change. We are the change. We are the answer to whatever that problem is. That is when we will really see ourselves start to move in the direction of success and to the places that we want to be, because we were not created to be so small and so little and just within ourselves. Those ideas were never given to us just for us. And we have to get to a place where we really, really understand that. And so I just wanted to take the time out in this particular podcast to really talk about what leadership looks like, feels like, sounds like, and the fact that it looks and feels and sounds different for everyone. And you don't have to fit into some sort of box in order for you to be considered a leader. If you're a mother, you're a leader. If you're a mother, you're a leader. And we talked about this. I mean, this is the very first podcast, because you lead a household all the time. Yeah. You may feel like you are just hiding in a box, but you do. If you are a person who sees that there are issues, and in your mind you've already started to develop solutions, or you can think of the solutions, or you really dream all the time about ways to solve this particular problem, that's a form of leadership. Like, you are a leader in your own right. You may not yet be ready to lead an entire team, but I would argue that that's coming. Like, eventually it will come. But you have to learn to trust yourself. And if you are lacking in confidence, I would really, really suggest that you connect with someone who can really help you to get the tools that you need to start building the ship and getting yourself to that next level. And it's definitely possible. And with support, you can do exactly that. And I say that because at every part of my life, there was someone who was cheering me on, who was giving me more knowledge and insight, who was encouraging me to use my voice. I did not get here. And again, talking about that journey, I didn't get to this point on my own. There are several people that I can attribute to the growth and development that has happened in my life over the years. Starting from, when I was that quiet young girl, my mother and my grandmother were great examples, but they were also my biggest cheerleaders and coaches, telling me to keep going, telling me that I could do it, telling me that my dreams were not too big and that I could achieve them. I've had some good administrators. I've had great friends. I've had mentors. I've had all sorts of people along the way that have really encouraged me to keep going, and have, even told me, like, your voice is so valuable. People need to hear what you have to say. And that gave me the wind beneath my wings to keep pushing forward, right? Because I am moving ever closer to being that eagle that is soaring above all of that. And I'm not saying that every day is like that, because I'm far from perfection, but I'm so much closer to that than I was, even 5 years ago. And so I just encourage you to keep moving forward and find those connections that will help to really change you and change your life and change your mindset and your thinking, because that has to happen. In my consulting program, that is something that I really delve into when I am working with leaders and building leadership, is about them really understanding and grabbing hold of the 4 C's, which one of them that we heavily pull on is confidence. Like, where is that confidence? And if we don't have it, like, how do we get there? And so again, just making sure that you are interacting with someone and with, a community of people, even if, again, this podcast was created to be a community, that really helps to bring the best out of you, because we want to grow. And I say we because that's me too. Like, I am always seeking for the next wave, the next way to go, and not like fads or trends, but knowledge. Like, that is the thing for me, is that knowledge is power, and I'm always seeking the next bit of knowledge that will help to get me to the next level. And so I encourage you to do the same, whatever that looks like. If you are interested in more information about diverse perspectives and the consulting side of that, we are all about helping you to reach your personal and professional goals and make those a reality. They don't have to keep being a dream. They can be a reality, and that happens through work and through development and through your commitment to your own personal growth. I would love to work with you, love to help you to get to that place. And so if that's something that you're interested in, be sure to reach out on the Diverse Perspectives website, which is dpdei.com. Also, being sure to connect with us. Rise and Lead Women's Leadership Perspectives is on YouTube and Spotify. We are so happy that you have decided to take the time to listen and to connect on today, and we hope to see you back next time. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share this particular episode.